Hello and welcome to our EDGE monthly webinar. Before we get started, I would like to remind everyone that our today's webinar recording will be available on our Acro webinar page within 24 hours. I will also post a link in the chat where you can go to access the webinar. Please feel free to turn on closed captions. And one last but very important thing, please do post questions to the Q&A. Using the Q&A feature, you can ask questions at any time and you can ask questions anonymously. We will be answering questions at the end of our presentation, and I will hand it over to Julia. Thank you, Julia.
Thank you, Belma. Welcome, everyone. We're glad to have you here. Welcome to our June 20th, 2024 edition of the EDGE User Group. And relax, because today you have plenty of time. It is the longest day of the year, the summer solstice. And even more exciting, tomorrow there will be a strawberry moon. Well, what's a strawberry moon? Well, it's going to be a full moon, and it's called the strawberry moon because it is the time when wild strawberries typically ripen. So strawberry moon, it's not necessarily red, but it could be. It could be pink. Other native names are the hot moon, the horse moon, and Anglo-Celtic names also include the flower moon, which we know there was a movie just by that name. So get out there tomorrow evening and enjoy that moon. Okay, welcome to our International Standards Council who are here with us today. I believe today on the webinar call we have Jasmine, Emily, and Robert. The IESC is our voluntary council who vets all the documentation and credentials that you see in EDGE and recommends the device and takes a vote on those things. They are made up of, if you can advance to the next slide, Belma, of a wonderful group of people with many years of experience, ranging from public and private universities to credential evaluation agencies. They do a lot of work in this volunteer role, reviewing and preparing and making those recommendations for you. Those recommendations are published in EDGE and are there to help you, guide you, and they are a guidance in your roles and in the work that you do. So thank you to those of the IESC that are on today. And I'd also like to give a big shout out to Deb Mahmoudi, who's on the call today. She is one of our IESC fellows, and she will share a little bit about that in a few minutes. Onward to our poll. Can we launch the poll, Belma? See if it comes up here. Yay! Here's our every EDGE user group poll. And you'll see that there are 3 questions. The first one asks if you're an EDGE subscriber. Then, is this your first user group, EDGE user group? And what segment do you represent? We'll give you just a minute to think about that. I believe our moon rises at 9:07 p.m. tomorrow. I guess that's Eastern. I don't know if that's Eastern Standard Time or not, or what time that is. But those times will vary by your location. But get outside and enjoy it. I love this time of year. I know it's been brutally hot for some of you, and I hope you're able to stay cool during this time, but try and enjoy that long day. All right, Belma, how's our poll looking? See what we've got here. 94% of you are EDGE subscribers. We thank you for your subscription, and we will always continue to do our very best to make sure that the product you're receiving is the best it can be. Is this your first EDGE user group? 15 of you, welcome. First timers, we're so glad you're here. That's 29% of you. The rest of you, welcome back. You are sort of the backbone of these webinars, and we appreciate your work. As far as who you represent, the vast majority of you are from an institution. Fantastic. We've got some interesting news about a webinar coming up for you that IIE did that I think will be very important in your work that you do. And those of you from an evaluation service, welcome and thank you to our government representative who is on the line. We are glad that you're here. All right, with that, let's get started on what's new and what's coming up in our agenda. Drew, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Julia. So down in the chat, we've got a few people that are including some of the things that they've forgotten on vacation when they were going on vacation. Maybe this list will help remind someone else something to not forget in case you've got any trips coming up here in the summer months, here in the Northern Hemisphere at least. So today, staying in the Northern Hemisphere. Let's go a little bit, I guess they're further north than where I am, over in Estonia. We've got some updates on Bologna compliant degrees there in that ECTS country. We're also going to head south into Liberia to talk about, there's an update on an ongoing discussion. For those of you that were present last time on the Edge user group, we did talk about some changes that were being published and posted for Liberia, and Emily's going to go through and walk you through some of that research that we've finished going all the way through, and also maybe some differences between how you might see those different grades represented. We're also going to go in and talk about an engineering degree over in Djibouti, which let's see, Robert's going to come in and talk about that research that he did there. I mean, other than that, we'll give you some updates about the IESC Fellows application that is live, that is on, that's available for you to submit your applications to now. We're going to hear from Deb in a little bit. And don't forget, the BW seminar is also coming up. International Institute, you've got all kinds of things, but let's get into the content. Can I hand this over to you, Jasmine? Let's start up in Estonia.
Thank you, Drew, and hello, everyone. And thanks for allowing me to speak on Estonia, because I had the good fortune of visiting this beautiful country when I was attending an EAIE conference that was in Helsinki, Finland, another wonderful country, where we took the ferry into Tallinn and got to see the old medieval part and so forth. So Estonia is, as you know, part of the Bologna compliant degree structure. And one of our EDGE users and prolific contributors, Alex Popovsky with Ucredo, brought the issue of the bachelor or the baccalaureate degree from Estonia to our attention when he was referring to EDGE for an evaluation he was preparing. Under the current entry for EDGE, the degree program is identified as 4 to 5 years. Then there seems to be some mention of credits, and then comparing those credits to the ECTS. And Alex's recommendation to the IASC was if perhaps we could distinguish the degree program that was offered pre-Bologna from what is now currently being offered in the post-Bologna structure, because the way it is currently posted on EDGE can be confusing for the user. So we are addressing these the countries that have adopted the Bologna system, and we are addressing the revisions of them. So Estonia is going to be one that it will be updated shortly, and thanks to Alex Popovsky, who has even assisted with the drafting of the credential advice. But I will give you a bit of a synopsis of it today. Pre-Bologna, the degree, which I will not attempt to pronounce, required 4 to 5 years of post-secondary study, and also included a state entrance exam. The credential advice for this is comparable to a US bachelor's degree. So what you will see in the coming days would be a split. You will see an entry for pre-Bologna bachelor degrees and post-Bologna. So the pre-Bologna, as I said, was 4 to 5 years, required a state exam for admission and completion of upper secondary education. The credential advice is comparability to a US bachelor's degree, and it provides access to employment as well as graduate studies toward a master's. Under the new system, which is the pre-Bologna adoption of the degree program, it is now going to be 3 years of post-secondary education and the completion of 180 ECTS, the European Credit Transfer System. And it does require completion of upper secondary education as well as the state entrance exam. But the big difference is that now the program is 3 years versus the 4 to 5 years of the pre-Bologna system. The credential advice for this 3-year degree is comparable to 3 years of university study, undergraduate university study. In Estonia, it does allow the person to continue on to further study toward a master's program or employment, but the credential advice is going to be comparable to 3 years of education, because when you convert the 180 ECTS, it is comparable to about 90 US semester units of credit, which is part of a 3-year program. So that's what you will anticipate to see shortly in an updated version of this degree in Estonia. Thank you. And I think it's Emily next.
Hello, everyone. It's nice to be with you all today. So if any of you were with us during last month's Edge user group, there was a little bit of a kerfuffle. And so I'm here to clarify all that now that I've researched it with the IESC. So what happened was I was providing information on the updates that we did for Liberia in the country education profile, which included the grading scale. And I was attempting to explain that the grading scale for the Liberian senior high school certificate examination is very similar to the West African senior school certificate examination. They're both 9 points. It's just that one is numeric and the other is alphanumeric. But in terms of what they represent and the descriptors, they're the same. And therefore, I consolidated it in the presentation to show the US grade equivalence. On to the next slide. What happened was there was a couple of people who were very astute among the webinar participants who pointed out that they were in fact treated differently in the grading scale portion of Liberia on EDGE. Where D7 and E8 was regarded as equivalent to a D, whereas 7 and 8 was regarded equivalent to a C. So my attempt to show the similarities with that consolidated grading scale was in fact not representative of what was in EDGE. On to the next slide, please. So I said that I would get clarification and report back to you all today. So we did debate this and look into this at with the IESC. And so I wanted to review some concepts when we talk about grades and grade conversion. So the thing about the D grade, converting it to a D grade, is that what it represents is not really a universal concept. It's not found in many countries or most countries around the world. It's really most prevalent in the United States. A D grade is a bit odd in that it means below average, weak, and passing, but unsatisfactory. So it's a bit conflicting there. But in essence, it is a conditional or marginal pass, but still worth 1 quality point, right? So an A is worth 4 points, B 3 points, D 1 point. It still gets a point. However, there are some caveats in US higher education. For example, when you're talking about transferring to another higher education institution, you will likely not find transfer give it to any courses that were achieved with a D grade. Similarly, you would not find a course with a D grade that would be applied toward that major. If it's within the major, that's a no-go. Or they're unable to move on to a next level course if that one has a D grade. Because the idea is that the student should have sufficient comprehension to be able to go on and take on more advanced concepts within that subject area. So those are some of the caveats of the D grade, and we have to be mindful of that when we're trying to equate it, if you will, and determine the US grade equivalent. On to the next slide. So the first thing is to see what grading scale and conversion schemes are out there. And for example, if you don't find it in EDGE or elsewhere, what do you do? What does the IESC do? And so first and foremost, we have to obtain the grading scale information in terms of how it works in the country of study, what it means, what it represents. Without this information, there's no point in moving forward because we need to have that when we're making conversions. And then we look at the touch points. We determine what represents the minimum full passing grade And essentially, we would mark that as equivalent to a C grade, determine what the failing grade is, mark that as the equivalent of an F grade, and then the highest possible grade as equivalent to a grade of A. Then you would look at what the remaining grades are in that distribution. And then again, taking into account what it means in the country of study, and then adjust as needed. Why do I say adjust as needed? Because you might end up with a situation where, let's say perhaps it's a 14-point grading scale, and then you end up having to put in pluses and minuses. So what you had initially deemed or drafted as equivalent to a C grade might end up being a C minus in the end of it. So there's this process. Let's go ahead and look at the next slide. So here we have, for example, the ECTS grading system. And so we, again, look at what is the minimum full passing grade. That would be an E. And luckily, we have the descriptors. It means sufficient. That's the minimum full passing grade. So we would make that equivalent to a US grade of C. The failing grade is F. So we make that equivalent to F. And then A being excellent and the highest possible grade, we make that equivalent to an A. And then we look at the remaining ones. And luckily, again, with the descriptors, it's fairly easy. So it comes out to be A, B plus B, C plus C, F and F. So what's interesting is that even though the ECTS system has a grade of D, again, we have to look at what it represents. And it is actually above the minimum full passing grade. It's a satisfactory. So we've made that equivalent to a C plus in our recommendations. What is also interesting to note is that there is a marginal fail grade in FX. And this has been provided here to make a distinction from a full fail, if you will. But the marginal fail, still that course would not get any credit. So that we would just go ahead and make as equivalent to a US F grade as well. So that's one example. Let's look at the next example, which we have with Vietnam. And so there are a number of grading scales that could be used. So we have it consolidated here, but again, luckily we have descriptors so we know what it means in the country of study. So again, the minimum full passing grade would be a C or 2 or 5.5 to 6.9, which is an average. So we make that a US grade of C. The F or the 0 or 0 to 3.9 is a fail. So we make that equivalent to an F. And then the A or 4 or 8.5 to 10 is excellent and an A. And then we're able to slot in the other ones, again, looking at what it means in the country of study, good and below average. So in this case, they have a D grade and it does actually mean below average. So here we can comfortably say it's equivalent to a US grade of D. So now that we have this information about how to approach converting grades and what the D grade means, let's come back. Let's go to the next slide and come back to our WASC and Liberia Senior High School secondary certificate and see how do we now view the D7, E8, 7 or 8. If in the chat you can let us know, what do you think? After what we've just discussed, should we make this equivalent to a C or equivalent to a D or something else entirely? What do y'all think? Thank you. We have someone, a dear friend who says whose vote is a C. Someone says, okay, it's coming in. Ooh. Looks pretty split. All right. I'm loving that. Okay. So here's the big reveal. This is what the IESC settled on. On to the next slide. So what we have here is we landed on the C. We had, to no surprise, 2 camps or schools of thought within the IESC. And again, we're looking at what the minimum full pass grade is and what does that mean. So these credit passes, the C4, C5, C6, or 4, 5, and 6, these credit passes are the minimum grades needed for eligibility for university entry, okay? Meanwhile, the passes, if you will, the D7, D8, 7 and 8, that's the minimum needed for acknowledgement and credit, if you will, on the certificate itself. So to get credit for a subject pass, whether it's WASC or the LSHSCE, it needs to be at minimum a D7, D8, or 7 or 8. And so for this reason, we decided that it should all go with an equivalent grade of C. Now, because we do have this 9-point scale, if you will, we decided to expand it out and then add pluses and minuses, and it worked out perfectly. But yeah, there was a huge debate, 2 competing schools of thought, but this is where we landed because while the credit passes are needed for university entry into a degree program, the passes, if you will, would be sufficient for entry into a diploma program. So we're thinking about, for example, not just universities, but junior community colleges and all sorts of other educational programs. So because we're looking at this in terms of the bigger picture or wider picture, we went with a C equivalent, CC minus for the 7 and 8 range. One thing to note is that if you consult, for example, the NCAA, they actually made it a D grade for the 7 and 8 range. And again, that's perfectly acceptable because they're talking in that regard about university eligibility, whereas we're looking at higher education altogether as a whole. So this is an example of where you need to look at what your methodology and philosophy is and the purpose, what you're trying to get at in terms of looking at the students' performance and level of preparedness for your program. Our EDGE database is consulted by many, including, as we see, government officials, employers. So we have to look at this as a much bigger picture and not solely for a particular type of university. So that was the big reveal, and thank you all. That was a very important exercise. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Thank you very much, Emily. So after that, we're going to go into Robert. I'm going to let you talk here for a second. If you have anything that you wanted to add on to that, go for it. But I'm going to step back.
No, I wouldn't dare touch that. Emily did a fabulous job as usual, both of research and presentation. If any of you have participated in the EdUsers webinar in the last couple of months, the last 2 times, you probably are aware that I've been working on Francophone African engineering degrees, that it was Tunisia, Senegal, Algeria, and Morocco. Last time, I think I talked about Algeria because the first 3 were pretty straightforward. Again, let me remind you of what started all this. It may have been Dave Mahaly who wondered why the Francophone African engineering degrees, which sounded a lot and looked a lot like the one in the engineering degree in France, upon which their educational systems are based in any case, and yet there was a different credential advice for these African engineering degrees versus what we say in EDGE France. And so Dave said, shouldn't we take a look at that? And so I did. And sure enough, it turns out that they all but one, look very much like the French Grande École engineering degrees, the Diplôme d'ingénieur. Sometimes it had a variation on the name, Diplôme d'ingénieur d'État, the state engineering diploma, so on. But in the end, they were the same, 5 years. Francophone Africa now all adopted the LMD pathway and ECTS credits. And so Senegal, Tunisia, and Morocco, all those engineering degrees were essentially mirror images of what you find in France. So we agreed, IESC, after a discussion, determined that we would make the credential advice for those 3 engineering degrees now 5 years, 300 ECTS, make them all comparable to a U.S. master's degree. We did not do that for Algeria, and tentatively, because we learned that the Algerian version did not lead straight unobstructedly to the doctorate. As we dug a little deeper, as I explained last time, we found that in fact, once they adopted the LMD pathway, that engineering degree did access the doctorate, so that it became just like all the others. But prior to that date, that was not the case. So that's why we have now bifurcated credential advice in EDGE Algeria. Well, I thought after last time that I was done with this project. Then one day, last week or so, I came across a University of Djibouti engineering degree that, once again, looked just like the French model, just like the other Francophone African ones. So I started doing a little digging, and sure enough, in 2006, Djibouti adopted the LMD pathway. And curiously enough, in that same year was when the university was created or founded, and they immediately adopted the LMD pathway, and for engineering made their diplôme d'ingénieur the same as what you find in Morocco and Tunisia and, of course, France. And so after reading through the description of the degree on the university website, and then going to another source that showed a ladder block ladder showing the pathway and how that diploma of engineering led straight to the doctorate there in the country, I determined that we wanted to do the same thing with this engineering degree that we had done with the others. Now, here's the curious thing. When EDGE first rolled out, of course, there was no, it was just before 2006, so there was no university at the time. And secondly, we had not even determined for sure what we were going to do with the French engineering degree. Now that that's all been resolved, and now we have learned, or what I learned is that Djibouti, the university, had its first doctoral class. There were 9 people they were very proud of this, and so they wrote all about it on their website. The first 9 doctoral candidates were admitted in 2021. So ostensibly being 3 years in duration, sometime this year we should see perhaps the first doctorates awarded, but we'll wait and see. Just a reminder, we never put in EDGE a credential that has not yet been awarded. So the doctorate from the only university in Djibouti has not yet been awarded, so we won't have an entry for that. We will, however, have an entry for this engineering degree that we now know a great deal about. And so you'll soon find, if it's not already in there, I forgot to ask Drew if he's put it in there or not, but you'll soon see it if it's not there already. Anyway, back to you, Drew.
Well, Robert, I can answer that. We do already have that posted there within EDGE. On the homepage, whenever anyone, whether you're an EDGE subscriber right now or not, whenever you go to acro.org/edge, there will be a list of some of those updates that we've recently made, and Djibouti is one of those that you'll be able to see. I always think it's interesting just to learn a little bit about the flag, just to see what that looks like. But you can click right on there, and it'll take you all the way through right to this that includes all of the author notes, the credential description. I found this one interesting because Djibouti is not in Europe, and yet it uses those ECTS, and that's the kind of comment that you're going to get on credentials within Acro EDGE that authors are going to put in those author notes when there's something else that you need to consider as part of it. I think that it's positively wonderful that we can make these updates and ensure that people's work is going to be reflected appropriately there. So with all of that, those are some of the content updates that we have made. Me and Dave Mahaly have been going through, and as you've heard, one of the projects that we've got going on is that we're getting updated ladders. We've got we talked about the Araratian Baccalaureate from Armenia not too long ago, and wanted to be sure that that we were getting the Armenian ladder in there. Now you might notice that Araratian Baccalaureate's not there. It's because all of these ladders do not represent a comprehensive view of the education system. There's going to be benchmarks that are really listed on there, common pathways, and then of course you're still going to have each credential listed on the profile itself. And so you can always drill over into those list of credentials to find out more information. We also put Germany on there just because Germany is a very simple system. As you can see, very few boxes that you need to understand when looking at all of those possible pathways when traveling up. It's the kind of thing that you can zoom in on. It's the kind of thing that is designed so that it will be open at the same time when you're looking at other credentials. As we've mentioned earlier, Jasmine alluded to it earlier with the update on the, pardon my translation, the back of the bachelor's degree there from Estonia, the baccalaureate, the back of when we have that, and we get a submission that comes in from everyone that's got redacted documents, it really does allow the IESC to move forward and look at that a lot quicker. So Alex, again, thank you very much for sending that on through. And with that, let's move on into a couple other things that ACRO is doing around here. Julia, I want to bring you on to talk about the Exchange, which is a place where you can develop those networks. And then, Deb, I'm going to have you talk about a network that you've really been participating in here in just a second. I'm going to drop off.
So all of you who were involved in the International Activities Group, which was a Google group at ACRO, know that that group has now been closed. We have moved away from Google Groups to the ACRO Exchange. And this is really a nice member benefit. It can store things, it can keep you up to date, and it's a great way to communicate with one another. It is available as part of your member benefit, and you log in using the same credentials you would use for all ACRO web-based services and products. And really, we encourage you to go in there and share with your fellow ACRO members and colleagues on any issues that you're dealing with, struggling with, etc. It seems to be a very engaged group in the communities that I'm involved in, and you can select which communities to be involved in, and there are many of them. So look at those committees. You can also decide how often you want to receive messages. Do you want them in digest form? Do you want to get that daily, weekly, etc.? So just a lot of flexibility with these, and we encourage you to go on and take a look at them. We can go on to the next slide. All right, this is the last week to apply for the Baden-Württemberg seminar. The application is open now, but it will be closing on June 24th. So please, if you're interested in applying for the seminar, now is the time to do so. This year's seminar will be in Stuttgart in person, and really a great opportunity to learn about the education system, the types of institutions that are available in Germany, and how movement is done between those types of institutions, whether it's done, and also looking at comparability. If you are a study abroad, an admissions, a recruitment, a records person, ISS person, this is for you. There's a QR code where you can learn more, but once again, the closing date is June 24th. Decisions will be released sometime in August. And with that, I'm going to invite Emily and Robert, who have both been on the Baden-Württemberg seminar, to just share a few thoughts on what they gained from the seminar and their recommendations on applying. So, oh, and Garrett's here, and he's been on it too. He was actually just on it 2 years ago, and I was with him on that seminar. So, Emily, would you like to say anything and then turn it over to Robert?
Yeah, I really so grateful for the opportunity. I mentioned before that I don't want to date myself, but I actually did this program in 2003. And till this day, I still draw from that week-long experience. It it was so well organized. And what it is I call it, I guess, an educational tour of the state of Baden-Württemberg. And it's, with the exception of the airfare itself, everything else is all expense paid. And they really take care of you. And you get to see so many different levels of education and educational institutions. And you get to understand the culture. And Germany, especially pre-Bologna, the education system was considered rather complex. I know Drew was making comments about the very straightforward ladder, but it's not straightforward. And I know from yeah, in the evaluation office, especially again pre-Bologna educational system, people did not want to evaluate Germany, but I loved it because, and I have the Baden-Württemberg seminar to thank for it, because it just made things so much more clearer and understandable. So I can't stress enough to please go ahead and apply for it. It's really well run.
This Robert, I would definitely echo what Emily has said. It's a fantastic experience. I went evidently a couple of years after Emily, and I went in 2006. We were based in Heidelberg, and I was fortunate enough to get to go back in 2012 while I was still on the ACRO board as vice president for Group 2 International, and represent ACRO at the 30th anniversary dinner that was held in Tübingen. And because I got there a couple of days before the dinner, I was invited to come along with the Baden-Württemberg group of US educators at the time for a day or so before I had to go back after the dinner, back to the States. And once again, in just a day, learned even more than I expected in just that brief amount of time. Fantastic experience. Let me just conclude by saying that, you know, some of us, if I don't know if any of you were at the presentation Bill Paver and I did in Columbus on how to research an EDGE profile. But in my portion of the talk, I talked at length about all the research opportunities that we had in the 80s and 90s, and as the century turned. All of those, many of those have gone away. And this is one example of a professional development opportunity that still exists and still goes every year. And it is just an incredible opportunity. So please don't miss out on this opportunity. Sign up before the 24th. Back to you, Drew.
Sorry, if I could come back in and add something, because I noticed something in the chat and the comments about evaluators being eligible to apply. My understanding is that for eligibility, you have to be either an ACRO or NAFSA member, and maybe Julia can comment on that. But one thing that so, again, impressed me about Baden-Württemberg seminar is that they really are looking for a variety of professionals in the international education space, whether it's a registrar, evaluator, international admissions, study abroad. I've always been an evaluator. I've never been associated with a university as a professional. And I was selected, and I know a couple colleagues in the same situation. So an evaluator might not be an obvious choice, but they certainly aren't not considered. Because again, a few of us did have the opportunity. So I would not discount that.
That's correct, Emily. And it really is open to anybody who is an ACRO or NAFSA member. And they do like that diversity, not only of profession, but of experience in the field and of the types of institutions. There are a couple of caveats. They will only select one individual from an institution. So if you and your colleague at an institution say, oh, let's both apply, you should know that only one will be selected. And the only negative side I can say about this seminar is the fact that once you go, you've gone, and they will not consider you for a second trip. They want to spread the love around and have as many diverse attendees as they possibly can. So while Robert went a second time, he went as a board member because each year in either an ACRO or a NAFSA representative accompanies the group on the seminar. So those are pretty much it. There's a lot more information on the website, And if you are on the ACRO website, you'll find there's access to a lot of other articles and sort of diary entries that you can read about what some of the actual attendees thought. And I know Garrett Seelinger is on here. He went, like I said, 2 years ago, which was the 40th anniversary. And at that one, we even had big, huge balloons, Robert. So it was quite an event. But he did a diary post for us, and we love it when people are willing to write about their experience and share that with other ACRO and NAFSA members. So onward, let's go to the next slide.
Hey, speaking of
Okay.
sharing experiences, this is the perfect segue. I'm gonna hand this over so that Deborah Mahmoudi and Julia, y'all can have a conversation about the IESC Fellowship. I just want to encourage everyone. I'm going to put the link in the chat. Go ahead and consider this one. It's a wonderful opportunity for you.
That's correct, and it's coming up, and I will just give you a little bit of a background on it and then turn it over to Deb, who's really who you want to hear from on this, because she's going to talk about her actual experience. And when you apply for the fellowship, the deadline is August 12th at this point, so please, you have time, you can consider your application. It really is an opportunity to really push forward on your sort of networking and professional experience. You'll be mentored by experienced IESC professionals, and that is just in and of itself a huge learning experience. And we will come up with a research project that you will really research for the good part of a year. You'll present on it. We'll have you present at ACRO conferences, do a webinar on it, and also put together a Connect article on what you found. So good opportunity for you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deb. Deb?
Hi. So I'm Deb Moody. I work at the University of Alabama as a credential evaluator, primarily working with undergrads who are coming from high schools. So I was really excited about this opportunity, especially my first pitch for it is it's a really good opportunity if you see, there's some other opportunities at other organizations that involve like a lot of travel, and I have a young child, so that wasn't a good idea for me right now. So it's a really good opportunity to advance professionally and get some professional development while not really traveling, which is good for me. So, but I did get to travel and do the presentation at at ACRO's annual meeting in Ohio, which was really, really awesome. And I had a really great experience with that, especially because I finally got to meet my co-presenter, who is going to be at the next EDGE meeting, if you would like to hear her version of this story, Colleen Bailey from Temple University. So it was really cool to be able to present at ACRO and also get all this mentorship. A couple of our mentors were able to come to ACRO, which was really cool to get to meet them in person and really hear. And also a lot of the lovely people from ACRO are like Julia are at ACRO, which is nice to be able to put faces in person. So it's been a really good experience. We're working on Indian higher education grading scales, which is a unique and interesting topic. And I really have enjoyed learning a lot about it. As a lot of you probably know, India is now the #1 sending country for international students to the US. So if you have any specific questions, I'm going to put my email in the chat. If you have any, obviously you can ask Julia and company questions about the program, but if you have any questions that you're afraid to ask them, you can feel free to email me. Happy to talk about it. And overall, though, I think it's been really great. And I said, Colleen is, I believe, speaking at the next EDGE user group, and she works in graduate education. So it's been really cool that we both come in with different perspectives. And I have 5 years of higher education experience, but less than 5 in international credential evaluation. So overall, it's been really cool. We're working on our white paper. I hope you all read it.
So Deb, I'm gonna put you on the spot right now. Is there anything that you think that potential applicants would really appreciate knowing, that you kind of walked in and was a little bit confused about, but once you got there, maybe there was it was illuminated a little bit more? Anything about the process, anything? You mentioned that there's a real opportunity to connect virtually, and I think that is something that people really have to consider. It's not just the time, it's the budget, but anything that you can think of that was really nice once you got settled?
Let's see. I think that at first I felt really a little stressed that I would have to do a lot all the time, but I mean, it is a continual process, but it's like every month I set aside some time for obviously the ISE meetings where I listen and learn a lot, but also to the actual project is not like, it's not, you're creating a presentation for a 50-minute presentation at a meeting. And then the white paper, some people can write white papers that are really long. This is not a dissertation. So it's nice to know that going in that you're going to have a professional paper with some other professionals helping you edit it, but it's not like, this is not a dissertation. You're not like, oh man, you don't have to, it's not, the hill is not as high as I thought it was when I started.
Thank you. I appreciate that candor, and really and truly, no idea it was coming.
It's been great. It's been great. And I really like working with Pauline. I mean, I'm not just saying that because she's not here. But we have gotten along well professionally and personally. So that's been nice. And I work at an institution. I work as the University of Alabama. So I was able to have my institution send me to ACRO because I get to go to a conference every year. So that's something to think about, because you will need to pay for yourself to go to ACRO if your institution won't pay for you. So I said, sorry, TISEP this year, and went to ACRO instead for this year. Plus, it's really hard to get to Quebec City. So
Thank you, Deb. That was great. And as I said, so much richer than what we can just give by providing the information and the specifics of the application process. So I think the participants really appreciate it, and we really encourage you to consider applying for the IESC fellowship.
And you can look at the previous papers. Ours is not done yet. You can look at them. Do we have a link for that? You can put a
I
link.
can put it up right now.
Just so you have an idea. And the IASC meetings, which if you do the fellowship, you're not a voting member, but you go and you learn. And that's been really fun to learn all the different things and kind of see the inner workings of how those decisions are made, and to see people's experiences all come together in a generally very harmonious way. And there's been a few times in which, even though I'm not a voting member, I'm like, hey, I actually have that credential. Do you want to talk about it? So which has been cool to be like, oh, hey, I can assist with that. So.
And thanks, Drew, for putting those links in there. If you can't get to those links right now, know that they are on the IESC page on ACRO's website, so you can access them at any time. And I think you'll find that if you look at those papers, the rich research that are included in those is really something to be appreciated. We're grateful for that. So I think we are at the point of the webinar where we're going to go to the Q&A. And for that, I'm going to go to my very good colleague, David Mahali, and he's going to wrangle those questions and help us distribute them. Dave?
Thanks, Julia. We have what can only be described as a paucity of questions so far today. The only one posted in the Q&A was a question about our WAC and WASSCE segment from earlier. Will the WAEC/WASSC grading scales update across all of the WAC countries? And I don't know who's poised to speak about that, but anyone who wants to jump in. In general, I can say that while EDGE tries to keep things, very consistent when you have commonalities between, regional examination groups and things, there are some differences sometimes that are going to preclude kind of a one-size-fits-all approach. So I'm going to hand over to Emily, who looks like she's ready to weigh in on this one. Thanks.
Yeah, the thing about what we share and report during these EDGE user groups is a lot of times these are works in progress. So the determination that was shared, that did just happen. So now, as you astutely pointed out, we do have to look at the other 4 countries just to make sure. But yes, that's the expectation and intention, is to update the other 4 countries. Thank you.
I'll add one thing. I actually worked on this project, I don't know, last year, something, I don't know. Because we found out we were behind the times on the WAC grading with the alphanumeric grading system now in use. And so I made sure that all 5 countries, West African countries, did have that scale and had it the same. So Ghana, Nigeria, Sierra Leone, the Gambia, Liberia. But as Emily said, it's only now that we've determined that, we don't want that 7 and 8 to be a D after all. So the first thing that will probably happen is Drew will update Liberia because of what Emily's just done. And then we will probably talk next time about, are we sure we want to go across the board with the other 4 countries and do it as well? My thoughts would be yes, but we need to get a majority opinion and vote on that to make sure that's what we want to do. But that will be the next step after Drew takes care of Liberia.
So earlier in the presentation, we had talked about going on to the exchange, and that is something that is available for all ACRO members. Now, an ACRO Edge subscription doesn't necessarily include ACRO membership and vice versa, but wanted to let you know that if your institution is an ACRO member, it's opened up to an unlimited number of folks at your institution now. That is a change from how we did things historically, and just wanted to bring that to your attention, that there may be a whole slew of resources that you didn't know were available that you can now get available to you, like right sitting at your desk. You can log into your account and you can identify who the primary contact is for your ACRO membership to get added on if you're not already a member. Let's see. Are there anything else that we want to highlight today, Julia? I know that we've talked about the BW seminar. I know that we've talked about how there will be the opportunity to see more from the white paper from the fellows. But I mean, with an absence of any other questions, this might be the longest day of the year, but a shortened Edge user group.
Well, I do want to give an opportunity to Dave to speak about the IIE webinar that was held earlier this month by ACRO. And Dave, if you'd like to just share some of that content, because I think it was really important information for our folks here in admissions and records work. So Dave?
I'd love to. I was, while people were talking here, I was trying to pull together my notes into some kind of a salient structure. I think I have 4 or 5 or possibly even 6 things. The first thing to know, this is from the IIE Outlook Brief for 2030 webinar, which was just last week, I believe. Student numbers are growing. Obviously, we've recovered from the COVID impact on student numbers. The number of international students was 6 million worldwide in 2023, and the projection is that the number will grow to 10 million in 2030. So quite a large increase, 4 million overall. As many as 2 million, that's 20% of those students are expected to be headed to the United States. That's about our overall proportion right now, and they expect that that will continue. The students come from 200 different distinct countries, and that represents every single region in the world. So there really no place other than the poles where international students aren't going to study abroad somewhere. One of the things they reported on was that in polling U.S. institutions, 92% of U.S. institutions want more international students on campus. This kind of ties into the idea that while some countries are nearing their capacity for international student hosting, Canada has very high 30% of their total capacity is taken up right now. The UK 22%, in Australia they said was 24%. In the United States, with our just over 1,058,000 or something international students, we're at about 6% of capacity. So there are institutions in the U.S. that would really like to get more. Some of those are smaller institutions that really haven't had a lot of international presence and are looking to grow that. Of course, we have some bit larger institutions with long-standing populations who are nearer to capacity than others. In any case, it's apologies for having this be U.S. centric, but the impact on the U.S. economy, according to NAFSA, was $40 billion in the 2022 and 2023 academic year. The final point is that they identified 8 or 9 countries to watch, perhaps 10, for emerging areas where you're going to be seeing increasing numbers, even though some of these have a lot of numbers already. And this is in alphabetical order, but Bangladesh looking to send more, Brazil looking to send more, Ghana, India, which is our #1 now, eclipsing China, Iran, Mexico, Nepal, Nigeria, Pakistan, and Vietnam. So those are the places that we will naturally gravitate to in terms of making sure that our EDGE entries are shored up, in addition to trying to do it more comprehensively. But that's the report from that webinar. It's available. I'm just going to drop it in the chat. That report is available to anyone who wants to see it at the URL that I just dropped in there. So that wraps it up for the IIE Outlook Brief for 2030.
Great, thanks, Dave. And I do think, as Drew said, I think that just about wraps us up for today. We invite you all to join us again next month when we will have our July EDGE user group. I don't have the date in front of me, but I bet Drew's going to drop it in the chat any moment now. And join us then. We are always happy to have you here. And if you find anything that needs an update in EDGE, drop us a line on that too. So until then, thank you very much and enjoy your weekend.